I never get to be in the cold open because I'm not funny. Bonnie and I never get. I think even Bonnie gets to do it more than I do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are Irenicast. I'm Jeff.
It's your boy, Alan.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
This is Rajiv.
On the first and third Tuesday of every month,
We bring to you our perspectives
On theology and culture.
From a post-evangelical lens.
Thank you for joining us for another conversation to provoke your progressive Christian imagination. This week, we're talking compassion. How do you get it? What is it? How do you live it? All the things with compassion. And for our segment, we are going to be bringing back one that I don't think we've done as a 5-person cast yet, but it's a segment that is very fun, and it's called Sound Charades, and we're very much looking forward to that. So Alan has kind of put together our framework for this conversation, so I want to turn it over to him, and he's going to guide us through how to be more compassionate individuals, how to live Jesus in our heart. I don't know. Go ahead.
the topic that interests me is unlocking our spirituality with compassion, looking at the role that it plays in our spiritual lives and our meaning making in the world. And I've personally gone through a pretty big shift in the past couple of years, and I've seen that play an oversized role in many different areas of my life. And so I just have a couple basic questions. We don't necessarily need to get to the hard stuff right away. I think it was Richard Rohr in The Universal Christ that said he's met monks from the East who the first question is, how do you practice? Or what is your practice? That's the very first question they ask you. Whereas monks in the West will ask things like, how was your trip? How was your week? Are you hungry? Do you need something? And I suppose we could start off by asking you all, what is your practice? How do you build your compassion? But that gets too serious too quick, right? My question is, can we awaken compassion? Is it something that we can wake up inside of us in your lived experience, your professional experience? What would you say to that?
What do you mean by compassion?
It's a great question. Carrying action and carrying intention for other folks or other life.
So according to it's sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others.
Yeah, one core component of compassion for me, to answer directly, is this experience of solidarity. And I think that's a step that a lot of us miss. And so we move quickly to charity or, just giving people from our place of power rather than receiving the world in a way that causes us to have more in common with other people, like thinking about our own suffering, thinking about our own lack and our own needs helps us connect with other people who have similar situations. And so that whole sympathy piece or empathy is one that seems like it's foundational for compassion in my mind.
My daughters are, first grade, and they have these habits that they're taught every day. It's on the wall. I don't know all of them, but one of them is seek to understand before understanding. I wish someone would have taught me that in first grade. This is something they're hearing on a regular basis. And I think that at the heart for me of compassion is understanding. But I also think that there's a spectrum of understanding, right? I think that sometimes we stop at, oh, I heard what you said, and I've immediately related it to something in my life. So now I understand the whole. And then when I act on that understanding, I act in how I've always acted. Then I revert to my understanding of my way of the view. And I don't extend that understanding into how then can I change how I normally react to a way that's more appropriate to what I now understand about your context. And that understanding is not owning. Understanding is not being a part. Understanding is simply, I have a glimpse. I don't fully get it. I'm on this side of the spectrum of understanding so now my posture has changed into learning. And I think that's the hard part, is that road to compassion and just being able to sit and not do anything is a hard one.
I think compassion it's like a gateway. I think empathy is the destination. Because compassion tends to still be centered around self, like what one perceives in another, which is important. You have to notice there's some suffering over there. That person's really hurting, or that the planet's really hurting, or, fill in the blank. And then that initial thing that relates to you then will hopefully lure us into a deeper relationship, which then leads to empathy, because then we understand deeply, but we got to start somewhere. I think cultural coaching around compassion as a start is really important. And we tend to, in some circles, see and teach compassion as a flaw or a weakness.
There's so much in what you both are talking about that I feel like could even be episodes on their own. Rajiv, you said compassion, you got to start somewhere. And I would say you always start somewhere. We're too quick to remove ourselves. I'm too quick to remove myself from the equation of my actions, of my interaction with other people in the world, and sitting a little bit longer with myself, realizing like, hey, everything I'm doing today does have an impact on me. Everything I take in and everything I give out is going to impact my brain, my body. And so connecting with that is like and passion, right? Like that stuff inside of us, like that energy that we find inside of our gut or something, that's transformative for us in one direction or another. And so paying attention to that over the long term, paying attention to yourself and be like, how is this shaping me? Some people would say that's narcissistic or like navel gazing, when really, in fact, it's the opposite. It's just recognizing we always have our own experience. And so, yeah, it's absolutely a gateway to so much good justice work. And Jeff, you talked about that actually comes from St. Francis, right? It's more blessed to give than to receive, to understand than to be understood. And that kind of wisdom is beautiful. I never heard that in church. Yeah, that's not something that we were necessarily taught.
We were taught you need to get people to understand the truth. Like, that's your whole...
And I think I think it depends on what you use your understanding for. If it is for controlling other people, like, I understand everything about you, so, I can, like you said, I can make decisions or think like I understand you and shut myself off, close myself off to understand, further understanding, more learning, more sympathy, because that path is so hard. It is so difficult to stay on the edge of someone else's experience. You ever listen to someone and you're like, all right, like, I'm so struggling to be with them right now. I got about 15 seconds and then my brain is somewhere else completely. I think it works that way with compassion. We're there for 15 seconds and they're like, all right, it's a little bit too much. I'm just going to assume I know everything about this person and I'm going to interact accordingly. Having that kind of openness is a lifelong training for certain folks. And I don't think, maybe it's helpful to tell a little bit more of my story of interacting with this topic, is that it transformed my Christianity to actually center compassion, to decenter making other people understand, or preaching the good news, or articulating what God is, and to actually recenter compassion for other people and think, maybe my Christianity and my spirituality is all about waking me up to compassion. Maybe that's the sum total of it that makes me a more loving human being for other people. And if that's the rubric that I would use, I look back and I'm like, man, we're failing horribly. We're failing horribly as churches, as even Christians, in centering compassion in our message. We're not more compassionate people half the time. I know that's not true across the board. I know some people are very compassionate in their spirituality, but our structures don't build that into us, and our practices don't necessarily build that into us. And
I have a hard time with this idea. Well, I feel like if we're going to invite others to find compassion, like if the idea is that we become more compassionate to the environment, to people, we first have to find compassion for ourselves. I think that we don't spend enough time with ourselves and noticing our patterns and our behaviors and digging deep to ask why we behave the way that we do. There are people in your life that you hear them being critical of you or critical of others, and your first thought is, wow, they're so judgmental. And what I begin to do is think, if they are that critical of me or others, how much more critical of themselves are they? Like, what is the internal talk that's happening that would lead them to have this sort of outward vomiting, verbal vomiting? We don't take a good enough account of ourselves. We're just like microcosms bumping into each other, unaware of how we're colliding most of the time. And so I think of your invitation, Alan, for us to slow down and to begin to wonder about compassion invites us to not just notice how we are compassionate towards others, but how are we even compassionate towards ourselves? Because I imagine that if I have no compassion for myself, if I expect myself to be at a specific standard, or I'm supposed to live this certain way, I would expect that all other people behave that same way. That's without compassion. Compassion teaches me, we are all sort of navigating the world the best we can. And it gives me the space to notice my own failures or the places where I need growth and that space in others. And it also invites me into that sense of, I don't have to understand you. This doesn't have to be my experience to believe you. And then leads to a place of action. Well, even though this is not my experience, even though I have no relationship to this, I trust you, and what can I do to walk alongside of you, to alleviate some of that pain or that whatever, that structure. So,
as I'm listening to all of you talk, I'm having a hard time accessing this conversation, and I'm trying to figure out why that is, and I think it's because it sounds like, and I might be wrong, like we're using compassion, the term compassion, as if it's a behavior, as if it's a way of relating to one another. And I mean, I think compassion is like a kind of withness, something that just is. It just is. Maybe thinking about awakening to compassion really does make sense because it's something that just is. The truth is, we are in a shared experience all the time. We suffer, we struggle, we love, we cry, we grieve. That is like a shared experience all the time. Because of that, it just is. And maybe we're closed off to it. And I'm sorry I'm like having a hard time finding words to articulate what I'm thinking. But I was reminded by reading Marcus Borg's book, Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time. I read it for a book study at my church recently. And I was reminded of the way the Hebrew word compassion is also the word for womb. And I think that makes so much sense. Like if compassion is like, I think Marcus Borg uses the term wombish. It just is. Those of us who have had wombs that have been used to make humans, you're walking around doing what you do. And there just is something happening inside of you that's creating this life. And you're nurturing this life as just part of walking around and going through your everyday experience. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there as perhaps a metaphor.
And it's I imagine it's painful and there's lots of discomfort.
Yeah, there's it's happening. There's an awareness to it, that the fact that it's happening. But there's also not a lot that you're consciously doing about it.
So there are several strands of Buddhism that would say what you're talking about, Bonnie, so beautiful. It's true. There's a seed inside of us that gets watered. It's already there regardless of what you do. There is this place of a compassionate space inside of human beings. And we either water it and grow it or pay attention to it. But it is that withness with everything else that we're either paying attention to or not. And so I think a lot of what we do is like narcotize ourselves. We're like, oh man, this is so hard. It's so hard to be a human being. It's hard to be in a family with people that are different than me. And so I do things to like shut off my feeling, my ability to be with people and to even be with myself. Casey, you talked about, starting with yourself, starting with compassion toward yourself. And I think both Christianity and Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, would teach that. In Christianity, we hear, love other people as you love yourself. And, if you can't start with yourself, you're going to love other people the way you do love yourself. And in at least Tibetan Buddhism, they talk about, that there's this practice called tonglen, which has helped me, because this is all kind of theoretical until you start bringing it more into an embodied space. And what they suggest during meditation each day is to just begin with breathing, pay attention to your breathing. You're trying to access a non-judgmental space towards yourself. Honestly, if you're a listener and you're thinking about your spirituality and you want to do, probably the best thing you could ever do, and if you do no more than this, maybe it would be enough, is to be non-judgmental towards yourself, but to actually see yourself as you are, compassionately, openly, clearly. And that begins a journey of seeing other people that way. And what you do in tonglen, it's this process of giving and receiving. And we talked about in process theology, the all of life is this exchange, right? I think it was Casey who said, maybe it's not robbery, maybe it's exchange. And it's a really beautiful thought. But you pay attention to your breathing. You just have an image in your mind of every time you breathe in, you're breathing in negativity. You're breathing in the stuff you would normally push away. Pain, suffering, shame, all that kind of stuff. And you basically are depositing it in your body. And when you breathe out wholeness or empathy or witness, and you're giving it out toward the world or toward other people. And then as you're kind of working with that textured imagery, you start with yourself. You look at your own pain and suffering and you breathe it in. And you give yourself the things that, instead of fracturedness, wholeness, and compassion, instead of anxiety, calm and presence. And then actually breathing that way and doing that often enough, it starts to change how you look at the whole world. And to me, it changed how I look at Christianity. I had to ask if this breathing practice did more for me spiritually than a lot of what my, evangelical rooted Christianity did. What does that mean about my Christianity? What is it making me a better person, or is it making me a less compassionate person?
Well, I think Bonnie's comments are really relevant in another way around just noticing. I think one of the things, Alan, is we spend the first part of our lives, a big chunk of it, thinking we have something. And most of what we think we have was stuff that was given to us, forced upon us, inculcated. And then we begin to notice, this isn't working for me. And so those practices that you're talking about, I think, are critical for any person desiring to deepen their spirituality, is to find what's your stuff. What is Alan's Christianity? What is Casey's Christianity? What is Bonnie's and Jeff's Christianity? So I think, Alan, the practice of noticing, paying attention, partially it leads to discovery, and partially it leads to revelation of what already is. But without doing that, all we're doing is dealing with what is being thrown at us. We're purely reactionary if we don't give ourselves the chance to find out what's within.
And it's okay to be reactionary, right? Taking Bonnie and Casey's metaphors of starting with yourself and it just is. Just recognize you're reactionary, allow it, but actually watch yourself be reactionary. And in that sense, you start to notice things. You notice the ways that you're resistant to love or the demands of love. And that's a really beautiful thing for any of us to ask.
Well, and I maybe highlight a difference between being reactionary, which I think comes as a result of not having much within, and then being responsive, which is being attentive to the world around you, and then the substance within meets that out of mutuality. So being reactionary is part of a developmental process, but I don't think we want to stay reactionary. We want to be responsive.
Beautiful.
Rajiv loves his R words.
I'm telling you, man, all the world's solution lays in the R.
I think that as kind of that all this is highlighting like the folly in, you know, judging compassion on, like Bonnie was saying earlier, outward expressions of that compassion. Because I think that what that does is that, especially in my experience in certain settings, is that perpetuates codependency that can be very easily misconstrued as, oh, that person's so compassionate, so nice, but not acknowledging the internal struggle of my whole worth is coming from this. And even the quick reaction, or I think the tendency for all of us when we're in this place of compassion is, you know, having compassion for ourselves. I think it's interesting to me that it always leads to questions like, am I a good person? And how conflicting that is. Whereas why do we jump to that question instead of, I am a good person? Like, and I think that it's really interesting how fuzzy that line can be between like self-actualization and self, you know, criticism or whatever.
Yeah, they say don't let the medicine be the poison all the time in Buddhist writings, because you can easily slip into a place of, I'm trying to awaken myself for myself, and it becomes a narcissistic loop instead of awakening all people and all things to our witness.
There's a Christian breath practice like that too. Buddhism and lots of traditions can work really nicely together, which is the generosity of Buddhism. But there's a Christian practice too, and maybe you know about this, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. It's an Orthodox practice where you have prayer beads often, and you move from one prayer bead to the next with your breath in and out, and you breathe in, Lord Jesus Christ, and you breathe out as if it's like there's like a circle that you make with your body in this practice and in this posture, and you breathe out, have mercy on me, a sinner, or have compassion on me, a sinner. And for those of us coming from evangelical and fundamentalist backgrounds who have been taught that we are sinners from the time we come into the world, and it feels, you know, there's a lot of triggering language in that practice, but that's not the intention behind the practice. The intention behind the practice is to awaken us to our need for compassion and for our shared experience of not always getting things right. And so that need for self-compassion, we don't always get things right. And we're reaching out to the whole universe for that compassion. And there a lot of people who do practice that breath practice in Christianity find it to be incredibly transformative. So I don't know. Have you heard of that? Have you tried it?
I mean, I've heard of it, but I've never done it myself. I don't have prayer beads to go through the practice with, but the connecting the in and the out, that's a really beautiful metaphor. And I also like to connect with people in the ways that I'm very resistant and stuck and not compassionate. I mean, I went to a grocery store a couple days ago, and there was these two cars who parked next to each other too close. And one person was saying they had to park that way because of a car next to them. And the other person was saying, you didn't let me get inside of my driver doors. So there's these two driver doors about like a couple inches apart from each other. And there's these guys arguing in the parking lot. One person's like, I'm going to go get my friends. Like, we're going to duke it out. And as I was walking in, I was like, thinking to myself, this is, over a parking spot. How stupid can you be to like have this huge fight where the cops are going to get called all because of a parking spot? And that's where my brain usually goes. But I remembered like, okay, everything that I experience in the day is awakening me with my solidarity with the world. And so I thought, I kind of laughed to myself. I was like, how many times do I get upset about the dumbest stuff? And then I look back, I'm like, man, why was I so upset about that? And so even taking in negative material, it's supposed to bring us in solidarity. So I love that picture of breathing in that prayer practice of being like, yeah, I am in solidarity with all the other people who are struggling to get things right and struggling to become a compassionate person. I wonder what it would do to Western Christianity to truly center witness and compassion above everything else inside of the Christian tradition. So there's this, one of my favorite apocalyptic parables of Jesus in Matthew 25 and also in Matthew 7. He talks about, in the end of times, there's this revealing moment, and not saying that this is actually a prophecy of what will happen. It's a story. It's apocalyptic. It's supposed to reveal something true, but there's these sheep and these goats, and there are people who are going to say, I called you Lord, Lord. And Jesus will say, I didn't know you. I had nothing to do with you. And there are going to be people who didn't call Jesus Lord, Lord. They're actually surprised by the fact that they're living in connection with this compassion. And they'll say, when did I see you? Like, when did I see you? And when did I show, mercy on you? And he says, anytime you fed someone, you visited someone in prison, you were with the sick, truly you were with me. And I wonder if most of what we do in Christian spirituality is that first half that has nothing to do with Jesus anyway, this, like, we're so egocentric sometimes in our way of doing spirituality. So I kind of, my questions posed to you, it's truly messed me up. I think I look at my Christian experience now as this is all awakening my compassion and like changing my perspective on the world. That's my spirituality. What can you see if that became the central focus of what it means to be a Christian, is just awakening your compassion toward the world? How would that change your experience of Christian community and Christian theology?
I think if we centered compassion, to answer your question, Alan, Christianity would look a lot more like a Mother Teresa version of Christianity, or a Jesus version of Christianity, which he's not a Christian. He never was a Christian, but he's the teacher. And I think it's one of the key things that we bring, speaking as a Christian, to the mosaic of religious traditions. Like there is no Christianity without that being centered. In my opinion. I mean, if I meet somebody who's Muslim or Jewish, or if they reflect back to me, wow, I saw compassion and love in you, then I would feel like, okay, I can claim this Christian identity then in relationship to you. Just the fact that we're asking that question means we're so off track. Like, why would we ask that question? That's just the core center of what Christianity means.
It's a radical rereading of Jesus to some extent from what I was taught, to center compassion. That God is not jealous. God is not judgmental. God is this expression of openness and presence and witness that is shown by the Christian message, right? In a lot of different ways, but that's not the only Christian message. I mean, go to any church on a Sunday, and do you walk out a person who is more compassionate toward yourself and other people? Sometimes no, sometimes yes, but sometimes it looks very different.
Because we've traded compassion for power.
Yes, that's probably where it's at.
We've claimed God is the victor, Christ is the ruler. That's what's happened.
There's this difference between East and West in Christ's victory. This is really interesting. So Christ in the West is depicted as, his resurrection, it's always him alone, sometimes with a flag, just this victor. Whereas Christ in the East and the icons is gathering everyone else up, holding all their hands and pulling them up, with him. And it's this communal experience of resurrection. And maybe it's just the individual nature of our Christianity in America. It's all about the individual, and it's not about this wider corporate experience that helps us get beyond our religious egocentricity.
When I talk about salvation, a lot of times, because I get that question a lot, are you saved? Which is always interesting. But the way that I talk about salvation is wholeness, that there's something about wholeness that is important. And I want to connect that to compassion. Salvation for me is about wholeness, and wholeness would lead to this sense of compassion, right? Like the way in which you are in the world, like Bonnie's saying. What are the fruits of the Spirit? Love, peace, joy, and a sound mind. And I think that all of those things come with first acknowledging that maybe we don't necessarily have those all the time. And how you get there is by confronting right? By going to the darkness, acknowledging your own stuff. And maybe that's why having talking partners is so important, and having people that you trust and love. Rajiv talking about friendship, because some of the people who are able to draw that out of you are the very people who are able to hold up a mirror to you and say, wake the hell up. Maybe that's what makes being in relationship and community so important.
This makes me think of Parker J. Palmer. Everything you're saying, Casey, about wholeness and community, he writes about how we're all struggling to unite our personhood with our role, or what is on the inside and what is on the outside, and to live honestly with ourselves and kind of in that wholeness. And there are places where spiritual community actually hurts the individual. Vulnerability and all that kind of thing is crossing this boundary with folks and hurting folks who are on that journey. Whereas true spiritual community is that non-judgmental space that does welcome your wholeness, that is not scared of the shadows, that is not scared of the darkness, because they know their own. Maybe that's why we're all asking this question, because that's the true thing that we're scared of, is that our culture is so much based on guilt and shame, or in our religious experience, that it's so scary to come out from the cave or whatever and to turn back and look at ourselves. So if you're someone who's listening, or even talking to myself, if you can find places where there is that non-judgmental space, it's worth all the money in the world, all the time in the world, to actually maintain that, to find that friends who are on that journey with you. Because staring in the mirror is so hard. When's the last time you looked in the mirror for like 30 minutes? Like, never, right? Like, we don't want to look at ourselves. And so having friends like willing to hold your hand in that process is so worth it.
Yeah, Zoom sort of forces the looking in the mirror experience. It's like,
I spend lots of time taking selfies, Alan. You don't know me.
Well, what you were saying, Alan, I think one of the things that I have surprisingly found comfort in, at first it was angering, is these thoughts have been around for a long time. They've been around forever. And these connections, these kinds of empathic, compassionate, really holistically uplifting connections to spirituality in the Christian realm have always been around. It's just they were new to me. They were hidden for many years, and then it was new to me, and then I was angry because it was like, wait a minute, this has been around all along. And now it's just more like, okay, let me access the history and the legacy of this beauty, and just enter that, and try to allow the history and legacy to offer me some healing and not be so self-centered around it. And it's been, that's been a hard road. I say that with a deep sensitivity to wherever folks are in their process, because boy, I went through anger like I've never been more angry in my life. Other than that process, I've never been more bitter. I've never been more hateful. It was difficult for me, but to finally get to where, oh, wait a second, I don't have to let that disappointment define me. And then sort of, joining the choir of angels, so to speak, the choir of the ancestors. It's been so comforting and healing, and it's still a lot of healing to do, but yeah.
I think it's hidden for a reason, because this stuff is so disarming, and it's so de-empowering for a lot of institutions and the way they work.
I was just thinking, Rajiv was talking about the ancestors, right? The choir of angels, or the choir of ancestors. And what I love best about the seniors in my congregation is how they've sort of found compassion for themselves. Like, oh, I forget things. Or even how they find compassion for their spouses who are aging, how they make a space for each other, like, we've decided that now we need to keep our keys here because otherwise we'll spend an hour looking for them or whatever. There's a sense of compassion and humility, and kindness, that comes with age, because, you don't take yourself so serious, or you at least can laugh at these moments where you see these patterns that maybe you've seen for 40, 50 years. I want to get there sooner than later, I want to get to a place where I'm more compassionate and I can laugh at myself. I can laugh at my partner, because there's a sense in which that's where real love resides, right? I don't love you for the things that, for the ways that you are 100 or whatever. I love you just for who you are, for the quirks, for the weird, funky things you do. I love you for all of those things.
I've heard it said by older folks that the reason that happens is that everything that we're not falls away with age. The older we get, like the false stuff starts to fall away, and then suddenly, like, you are who you are. And that's the first step.
I think that's in youth as well. I think we lose it. I don't think it's something that you have to wait until you're old to get. I think it's something that you have when you're 3 and 4. And then our culture kind of pulls it out of us. You know, we talk about non-judgmental space, and that can be a useful word, but maybe what we're really talking about is a space that's shame-free and revelatory. You know, like it's got to be real. It can't just be that you're not going to call out what you need to call out. There has to be a true authenticity to it to even say the hard things. And people will have feelings about those hard things. But that doesn't have to go along with shame, I don't think, or, you know, harming others.
Right. And there's got to be an equality in that revealing, right?
Yes.
You can't have everyone else revealing everything. And I'm saying this to myself because y'all know me. There's a lack of equality in the revealing that happens in this group right here that we're talking. But I think that's an important thing to strive for, is that we can't benefit from that type of environment and not participate and contribute to it at the same time. Otherwise, your compassion is fractured.
I like to think of it in terms of taking armor off. Like when you're a kid, you don't need armor necessarily because you're like everybody loves you. They like laugh at you. They're looking at you. They're taking care of you for the most part. For those of us who are lucky enough to have families and nurturers that are supportive. And then eventually you realize like that's not how the world's always going to work. And so you're putting all these layers of armor on. You're hiding who you really are. And then to find a space where, you know, when you're the only person taking armor off, it can feel so threatening. So absolutely threatening to be in the world. But what I've noticed is the more I'm able to do that, the more other people are able to do that. The more the whole is lifted up with every like piece of armor that's being taken off. The whole of the world is being made whole and more healed. And to create an atmosphere where I can take my armor off and you're not going to stab me like that. That's work. That's art. That's it takes everyone being in it. And I keep bringing up Buddhism because I think it's really, I've read Pema Chodron lately and a lot of Thich Nhat Hanh in the past 5 years. And they talk about taking refuge in the community of people who are all agreeing, we're going to take our armor off and you can come confront me shamelessly in an open-handed way because I can trust that you're giving yourself compassion and I'm giving myself compassion. Like that kind of spiritual community is, it's truly transformational. But scary if you're the only one doing it.
I was wondering about straightness and masculinity. Straight cisgendered men have a harder time coming to some of this because it requires you to admit that you have vulnerability under the armor. Whereas I feel like those who live in the feminine, or even many queer folks, we find ourselves a little more compassionate, maybe. And I just wonder how some of that plays into this conversation, you know, because there are going to be some, I imagine, some cisgendered straight men listening to this episode. And where do they find the support they need? Or what invitation would you give them to let their armor down? Or how do we invite you as queer people or as those who live in the feminine, invite you to do that?
You're so spot on, Casey, about that. And part of it is our own formations. But I would say an equal part of it is the resistance of the people around us when we do try, because it upends everything. I'm lucky enough to have people that are close to me that welcome it. They're like, yes, you need to be doing this work. Things do need to be upended. We're with you. I'm with you. I feel really lucky, but I also know I'm in conversation with a number of men who they aren't given the permission by their significant others, by their siblings, close friends. They're afraid. And when they've tried, they've been mocked, ridiculed. So it's a really difficult thing for straight cisgender men to go through this, because we can't do anything in isolation. And depending on where you are when you realize, I do want to do something different. I do want to live into my gender identity a little differently, my masculinity a little differently. It could risk all of your relationships.
And also accepting some of the responsibility when cisgendered, straight, especially white men start to take the armor off. It's not a smooth process. It's clunky. There's pushback. There's falling off the wagon. There's, putting the armor back on real quick. And if you have people who are around you who are trying to encourage you in that, like that space is dangerous for them too, because, suddenly I'm reclaiming my armor and now I'm using it against you. And like I was in CPE, clinical pastoral education, and I experienced that to a large degree. Like that process of becoming vulnerable and welcoming input from other people and providing accountability. It's messy and scary, and there's lots of emotions. And normally seeing that process it's just scary. I think the more power somebody has to watch them go through that, like, you don't let go of all the fear that you've had around power before. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but I can see why that would be hard.
I wonder if, like, in maybe even the image of taking the armor off or putting the armor on, like the armor is an illusion, and that's why I think I really, really resonated when I read the Marcus Borg book once again about how compassion is womb-ish. It's a space, or it's not even a space. It's just a moving in the world of nurturing, caring, life-giving. And armor it doesn't have anything to do with it. And so I think our, like, all of our language, all of our, like, cultural metaphors, our myths, even the stories that we embrace and get behind, I think we're like, there's this huge dearth of ways to access what we're trying to say. Like, what is compassion? Is it a seed that you awaken and water? Is it, what is it?
Sorry, you're listening to hear you say that. There's so many like symbolisms are going through my brain. You know how in evangelicalism we were told you have two wolves in you and they're fighting, and the one you feed. Why didn't they say you have two sheep in you, or you have a goat and a sheep,
exactly.
and they're both loved by God and they're both held, and they're both very vulnerable, and that's why they act the way that they do. You're right about the metaphors.
Look at all the superhero stories. Sorry, Jeff. I mean, like, all of the stories that are out there, and the way that good and evil, and how one has to vanquish the other in order for the story to feel satisfying.
True. I mean, I agree with all this. Like, all this kind of, there's some things coming together in my head. Number one, anyone else getting like weird flashbacks to like the armor of God metaphor? Because everyone says armor, and I'm like, I don't like this. Let's stop. But as kind of Casey bringing us kind of to that place of, cis straight male, which I can speak to some authority about, and kind of that whole mode of being in the world, and then kind of coming back full circle to that, talking about armor, and then talking about like the womb. What if it was like the placenta of God or something like that instead of the armor of God? But anyway,
that's awesome.
I think the key,
the many-breasted one, right. We always skip over that.
I think the key difference for me, and this is my total experience, is that as a cis white male, that idea of vulnerability was always uncomfortable to me. But but for me, it wasn't because of I was always uncomfortable with the mantle of masculinity that was placed on me culturally and within the church. And it wasn't that I was raised to be that, but it was that I had no nurturing. Like the nurturing was lack. And I think that probably why it's so similar with other people is that there's this sometimes underlying assumption that this type of person doesn't need as much nurturing as this type of person. And that key, like, you know, like that cradle, that thing that holds that thing together, the idea of nurturing. And I can say honestly from my own experience, like a lack of nurturing made me skeptical, made me to be self-reliant, made me to be reserved, so that, you know, not to go back to the other metaphor, but no one could see me through the cloud of my placenta. You know, no one, it was foggy, it was hazed because I wanted it that way. And to come out of that is still to this day a certain amount of like, no, I don't need that because it's an unknown. It's a scary thing to experience nurturing because it was never normal. It was never my mode in being.
And I think, like Bonnie was reminding us earlier, it was never real. And anyone who has eyes to see can see clearly through all of that. I mean, like every man with a big truck ever, right? We see right through you. Like,
especially when they have the, you know, metal balls hanging from them.
I think it's really helpful.
It's eternally cold for you, isn't it?
I think it's really helpful I heard recently from a therapist not to pathologize our coping mechanisms. Don't just look at them as something awful, you know, and terrible, and I failed, and this is terrible. That Jeff, in your case, and I think everyone can relate to this, regardless of who you are, you survived. You did what you had to do to survive. And instead of perpetuating that lack of nurturing, what if you're part of building a world and accept, like, even just meditating on the fact that, like, man, I have enough, you know, like even in this moment, like my breath is enough. The world, there's enough oxygen for me to bring in. I know that's such a small thing, but maybe that's all you have. And so you start there. Like, instead of perpetuating that wound of non-nurturing, maybe the goal of maturity and the goal of spirituality is the total opposite, is to let go of that reaction, to let go of the animosity and the self-reliance that comes from that. And, you know, I'm starting to think of like the hero. There are heroic figures that we never talk about who are compassionate giants, spiritual like giants. And I know that sounds totally triggering for people who come from evangelicalism. Like, I don't want to say that, but like, because there's a whole world of meaning out there that I think Christianity's barely tapping into to some extent. And other religions have had a wonderful, long storied history of making the central thing. And I know we bring our own piece to the mosaic, but it just sounds to me like doubling down on the wound is the wrong way to go.
Yep. I agree with you, Alan. I think you're absolutely right. And part of where this starts, and Casey, thank you for bringing up gender, because it is a really important factor in this conversation. But getting rid of the binary, you know, it is just a place to start. # smash the binary. Just let it go. Just stop.
Every binary, exactly. Because if we can't, we're just locked into what's always been.
I've heard the binary mind is good for certain questions. Like, you know, if you're building some kind of machine, it helps you build it and look at it from an engineering perspective, and really bad for the big questions about God or death or love or personhood.
We're talking about humanity,
or sexuality.
Yeah. I mean, like all the big,
right.
most meaningful stuff, moving out of that binary thinking and like into that kind of wholeness perspective. It might sound like, you know, woo language for some Christians, but really that's the path that we're on.
It was useful. Like, it's okay to say that things were useful for a period of time to help us be able to get to the next thing.
It's an important stage in our development, right? Like, binary thinking is important when you're 6, when you're 10. Like, that's fine. But when you're ready to move out of it, then you're ready to move out of it. And I think that all of our evolutions, all of our development, whether it's spiritual, physical, mental, they have those stages where we need to see binaries as a stepping stone or a something to help us provide a foundation to move to more complex ways of maneuvering. And
in American developmental theory, though, I think a popular developmental theory, adulthood is not compassion. It's like you're still a part of your tribe. You're a good patriot. You're someone who goes to work. Like you have all these like layers of meaning that require you to let go of compassion to be a good whatever. You know, a patriot will support America over and against every other community. And maybe recognizing like there is a further developmental piece, that piece of compassion, of growing to a place of maturity where you love yourself in the ways that you don't fit the mold and you love other people. It seems like there's more to be explored. There's like a whole terrain out there, and we're, you know, astronauts headed out into the wild wilderness to figure out like what the spiritual landscape looks like. I mean, it's exciting to me. I don't know how things will look differently when you take that kind of position on your spirituality.
And as we head into that wilderness, are there any final thoughts in terms of this conversation before we move into our segment and contemplate our compassion?
Well, I have a poem, of course, because I always have poems. This relates to that breath practice that you were talking about, Alan, about, you know, breathing in and using your own body to cleanse harm. And there's a poem by Judith Hill called Wage Peace. And I'll just read a couple lines and then maybe we can put it in the show notes too for other folks to read it. She wrote this soon after 9/11. Wage peace with your breath. Breathe in firemen and rubble. Breathe out whole buildings and flocks of red-winged blackbirds. Breathe in terrorists and breathe out sleeping children and freshly mown fields. Breathe in confusion and breathe out maple trees. Breathe in the fallen and breathe out lifelong friendships intact. And it goes on. It's a beautiful poem about that practice of breathing in the suffering and then breathing out a compassionate response. So I thought I'd share it in case listeners are into that sort of thing.
You're only something till you're not. That's the invitation. Notice in yourself where you are uncompassionate to yourself, where you are self-critical. Notice how you become critical of the world around you, how you are quick to anger or whatever, and know that you can change. You are only something until you're not. And so if you seek to be more compassionate, it starts with noticing in yourself the places that you are uncompassionate, the way that you treat yourself, the way you treat your neighbor, and change it. You have the capacity to change.
Building on that, I would say two things, and this comes straight from Pema Chodron's Start Where You Are. There's these compassion cards that teach tonglen, lojong, which is this Buddhist wisdom. The first is, if you notice, like Casey is talking about, if for one moment in a day you notice the ways that you've gotten stuck or you've made mistakes or you didn't get it right, you're already winning. You're already like, because that moment of clarity, you can always return to that. It's always going to be there. And even recognizing the ways that you got it wrong is a step in the right direction. And secondly, one thing that's been helpful for me is to realize all of it is material. All of it is material for you to wake up, whether it's good or bad, whether it's joy or sorrow, pain or pleasure, like everything that comes at us does have the capability of watering that part of us and waking us up. And so trying to remember that, to lean into the things that are uncomfortable sometimes and to recognize that it's still material for me.
Rajiv, any final thoughts?
Just keep feeling. Just keep feeling.
I like it. I like it a lot. All right. Well, let us know what you think. You can add your voice to this particular conversation by commenting on the show notes at irenicast.com/177. That's irenicast.com/177. Also in the show notes, you'll find relevant links and a complete list of all the other ways to like, follow, and contact the show. That's irenicast.com/177. And if you'd like to discuss this particular issue with us this coming Monday, October 26th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we will continue the conversation. If you can't make it, please feel free to email us your thoughts at podcast@irenicast.com, and we will be sure to include them in our continuing the conversation next Monday. So on the other side of the music, we're going to be playing an oldie but a goodie called Sound Charades.
Jeff, can we please have me saying that as our cold open for the week?
The what?
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens out there.
Who knows? Because
I never get to be in the cold open because I'm not funny. Bonnie and I never get. I think even Bonnie gets to do it more than I do.
You never know. Like this could be
I'm
in the
never
episode.
the cold open.
We could have already reached the other side of the music, and people are just catching us midstream in the midst of this conversation as we get ready to start our brand new, not a brand new segment, an old segment called Sound Charades. So how this is going to work, Casey, Bonnie, Rajiv, Alan, this is how it's going to work, is that we have a website, and if you want to check it out, you can look at it in the show notes. It is a word generator. And each of us has this word generator up in our browser as we speak right now. And what we're going to do when it's our turn is we're going to hit that button. It has various different categories of words, but we've picked moderate words. So words that are easy enough to understand, not hard, but not too easy at the same time. So once we get our word, then we have to try to get the other people in the show to guess what that word is. But here's the catch. We are a podcast. We are an audio medium. So we cannot draw a picture because that will not translate to you, our listener. We cannot use words because we're trying to get a word across. So we have to use sound effects, a la
only from our mouths.
Only from your body.
That's
from your body.
Funnier if it's only from your mouth. I'm telling you.
Okay, from your mouth, Alan. Alan wants everyone to know this is from your mouth. So, so that's how it's going to work. We're going to use sound effects, and we're going to try to communicate this word to the rest of the hosts and, by proxy, those of you that are listening. There may be many of you who, as we're making these ridiculous sounds, you'll be screaming at your phone, your whatever you listen to this on, and you know the answer. So this is how this game works. We're all on the same page. Everyone get where we're going right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
No, I felt the same way the first time we did this. But it's a popular one. People tend to like it. So because Alan's very adamant about it coming from our mouths, he is going to go first.
This is a non-judgmental space, right?
That's right. That's right. And it's as we record this, we can see each other through our Zoom interface. So we are not going to be using hand gestures or anything like that.
So with a whole lot of compassion and clear eyes, I'm going to click generate a word. And, okay, so I don't know how I'm going to do this one.
That means it's a good one.
Oh, man. Okay. Bring.
Bike.
Phone.
No.
Bell. Tricycle.
Bum.
Chime.
Like
piano.
Like bell ringers. What are those called? The
clock.
Doorbell.
Wang.
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 That's taking me down a whole different.
Bang. Bang.
Guitar. Instrument.
Xylophone.
It's an instrument?
Can I
Glockenspiel.
say things when people are close?
No.
How many seconds do you get for this? I feel like we should have a
How long
timer.
do I have to be on the hot seat? Bang. Bang. Bang.
Guitar?
Bang.
String
Bang.
instrument?
What'd you say?
String instrument? Guitar?
It's string.
Okay,
Yay!
Oh.
Oh my gosh, it's string. That was so difficult. I feel it like a sense of accomplishment. I needed this morning.
I'm the one that guessed it. It's not your accomplishment. It's my accomplishment.
No, it's my brilliance.
Hey, what happened? You're going to keep score now, right? That makes me number one. Okay, I just want.
All right, Jeff has. I will take score now that you say that.
Right.
Okay.
I think Jeff should go next.
Oh, you should. Thanks, Casey. All right.
Yeah, I agree.
Here we go. I'm going to generate my word. Okay.
just have
Rain.
to turn your camera off.
Why? This is a big
Do
step
it
for me
again.
not turning off this camera. Okay, I'm trying not to make hand gestures so you can't see it. So, okay, let's try this.
Dog.
Frisbee.
Running.
Catch.
Dog running. Dog playing.
Throwing.
Frisbee dog?
Game of catch. Fetch.
Fetch. That's the word. Yes.
Fetch. Oh, good.
I'm so fetch.
Good.
Is that a word? Can you be fetch?
You
that
can
fetching?
now.
Yeah. You are.
You just started it.
All right,
Means
perfect.
you're something
I'll go.
worth chasing after
Hashtag
and bringing
fetch.
home.
Okay,
Right.
ready?
All right, Casey, are you going?
I'm going.
Okay.
Ding, ding. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Circus.
No.
Carnival.
No. Ring, ring.
Church.
Tricycle.
No.
Ice cream truck.
Ringtones.
Fun. Crazy.
Shoo, 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 shoo.
Skating.
Ring, ring.
Telephone. Acrobat.
Waiter.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Pee-wee. Herman. Big Adventure.
Cartoon.
I don't know. Graduate.
I'm really bad at this game.
Swing, swing.
Ring, ring, ding, ding.
Yeah, bellhop.
No.
It's the bell. It's the song after that I'm trying to make the connection with.
Shoo, shoo, shoo.
Running.
This is
Oh.
so stupid.
Skiing.
No.
Oh, Shriners.
Shriners.
They're
little cars and
Okay,
big
can I
hats.
just tell you, I hate this.
Casey, in your face.
I hate
I
it.
told you. I told you right
Wait,
out of the
I just
gate.
have
This is
fun.
not
wait,
gonna
tell
be
us.
fun.
Do you have a question? Are all those three sounds like connected to each other?
Yeah, it's
It's
a
like a
thing.
progression.
No, it's just like helping you think of
Okay.
biking. That's what it was.
Hiking.
Biking, like a bike.
Biking.
So I was
my
thinking-
first thought.
yeah.
My
I was
first guess
thinking
was
of-
tricycle.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I
Because
was on the
you know,
right
like
track.
the Wicked Witch, she's on a bike, Da-da-da-da-da-da, and then like the ring, you know, like the ring of a bicycle.
That's why I
and
said.
then the
That's why I said Pee Wee Herman, Pee Wee's Big Adventure, because that was like that was what was going through my head
Yeah.
when you were making this. So.
And my first thought was tricycle. And when I said Shriners, there are little bikes.
I know, and you did say tricycle earlier, and I was like, oh, that's so close.
I think Alan and I should get a half point for that because we were kind of on the
Oh my
right track.
gosh.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I disagree with that.
I want to go next because I just want to get this over
Right,
with.
Bonnie
Oh,
and
yeah.
I are not fun. We
I
already
want to
talked
be
about
last.
Oh, jeez.
All right, let me try. Here we go. Oh. This one's impossible.
it. Just hit next.
Bonnie, with
Next.
God, all things are possible. You
This
got it.
one's truly impossible. It's soundless. I'm gonna hit another.
The
I
word
mean-
is soundless?
Yeah.
Wow.
I
That's
mean,
You could have
really.
awkwardly just sat
Yeah.
in silence with us.
I could have just sat in silence. And you
We
would
would have
to
thought you were
guess
you
a
were
million.
frozen.
All right, here's one more.
Silence.
Twang.
Twang.
The South.
Yeah.
Yarn. String.
Mitch McConnell.
Close.
Mouth harp.
Guitar strings.
Yes. Thank you. You
Guitar
got it. Guitar. Guitar
Oh, guitar.
counts.
Guitar.
Yeah.
There you go.
The first one was snowball.
Twang. All right.
Twang, because I was
no,
like,
like Stairway to Heaven.
you do it. How would you do guitar?
No, that's good.
No, I'm
That's good.
serious.
You're
I
out
wanna
there.
know.
I don't know.
Just any guitar
Like
sound.
tuning.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, something
There you
like
go.
that.
It doesn't matter
Oh, thank you, Casey.
because you were successful. So
All right, Casey has 1 point. You told me to keep track, so I'm doing so.
all right, Rajiv, you're up.
And I so do not want to do this. All right.
You'll be good at this
There we
game.
go. Nope. Can't do that one. This one,
You
it's
have
too
to.
easy, but it'd be fun.
Do
Okay,
it.
let's do it.
Well, it's not that fun. All right. I'll do it.
What? Okay.
Tweet, tweet.
Bird.
Bird?
Yeah.
Oh, come
I
on.
want, yes, 2 points for Casey.
No, dude.
No,
No.
no,
Too
no,
easy.
nope.
Do another
I think
one.
I won.
I'll do
I
another
was gonna say Donald Trump.
one. Okay. Oh my God. None
We
of
can't
these.
How come
episode
Alan gets to
without doing
decide that I should get points for that? I said it.
We both said it at the same time. You said it slightly faster than me.
That's
Just barely.
point. Slightly
That's
is
right.
still
I
faster.
get that's right. I get the point.
Casey gets half a point.
No.
I get a whole
Oh my
point.
God.
Wow.
Alan can't take score anymore.
That's right.
We'll
right.
have to take that
I'm
over,
the
Casey.
only one who understands how the scoring works.
You're that kid. We
Yeah.
play by my rules in my house.
Right. Okay, this one's going to be, this will be interesting. We'll see. Ready?
Yeah.
Arr,
Growling.
Chainsaw.
arr,
Bear,
Mad.
lion, tiger.
Indigestion.
Arr.
Chainsaw.
Lawnmower.
Foot. A Bigfoot.
arr,
Motor.
Rustler.
Ape.
Toxic
Monster.
masculinity.
Trump on the toilet.
Wow.
Okay. All right. Here, let's try this. Here. Okay.
So that's tweet, Casey. Electricity.
Arr.
Motor. Dying motor.
Oh, stung by a bee. Bee sting.
Stung by a bee stinging a bear.
What's the bug zapper?
I don't think that's the
Bugs,
sound
insects.
bugs make
Flying.
when they get zapped. Do they growl?
Do it again.
Where do you
it again.
live? What bugs are around in
it's
your
one
area?
word.
Jeff's onto something.
Which one?
Right?
Electric chair?
Bugs.
Taser.
Arr.
Explosion?
Oh, no hand gestures.
Oh, Frankenstein.
I said it first.
No.
I said it first. I
Yeah.
guarantee you I said it first.
No.
Yes. You said oh, and I said
Yeah.
Frankenstein.
No, we
Yeah.
That's stuck
Sorry.
in
we said
The
Frankenstein
hand
at the same
gesture gave it
time.
away.
Ty goes to the runner, and the runner is the producer
Man,
of the
I
show,
got 2
so
points.
I get
That's
it.
so cool.
All right,
And I got 2 points also.
Ellen.
1.5.
Right. I can do a tiebreaker.
You're going to do a tiebreaker?
Casey and
I don't care that much. It's fine.
It's okay, Casey. You're the winner in my
takes
book.
all-
You don't have to
that-
cheat to win, so it's okay.
Thank
Tie
you.
It takes
game.
all the fun out of winning when someone's like, fine, you win. Come on.
Look,
I
I'm an
don't
oldest
care enough.
child.
Perhaps-
I haven't. Look, I'm just brush it off. It's fine.
Perhaps that
Look,
was-
I have enough compassion for
You can have the
myself to
win.
know that I don't need this win.
I hate that.
All right, so let's make note of this. Now we know how to shut Alan down when he gets a little.
Right. I'm not kidding. Honestly, everyone who's closest to me, when they lean into what I'm doing, it's the worst thing in the world. Like, I want you to see what I'm seeing, not like just agree with me. I hate it so much.
We should have a segment called "Pushing Buttons" where we try to piss off one of the
That's a
co-hosts.
great idea.
Oh gosh, I don't know about
That's
that.
a great idea.
I don't know if my ego's ready for that right now. That'd be some good practice, though.
That'd be fun.
I know I could win that one.
Richie.
All right.
Oh, God.
Well,
That's how you ruin a podcast, you guys.
Look, I know
Do
exactly
realize
what
that?
I would do for Rajiv. I know exactly what I would do. I would pull up a pineapple pizza and eat it right in front of him.
Pineapple pizza I can tolerate.
It's broccoli.
Yeah.
Broccoli.
you can't. Nope, we're not going to do it again. I'm not going to. It's just so arbitrary, Rajiv. It's so arbitrary that you're fine with pineapple, but it will.
Oh, I have a story about broccoli real quick before we edit it. Just so you know.
The Hawaiian brothers.
I was on a trail and I was taught that, like, you know those little green plants with the yellow flowers? They're these like bushes that are like mustard. Apparently they're related to broccoli. You can just eat the flowers before they like bloom. They look almost like little broccolis. I never noticed that. So
You're gonna eat them and get diarrhea.
I did eat some. I ate.
Did you get diarrhea?
No. I ate that. I ate wild plum, elderflower, even like cattails. You can actually like cut them and open them up and eat the stalk on the inside.
Why would you
The
do
whole
that? Just
world looks
bring
so. What?
Why? Just bring trail mix. Like, don't.
Exactly.
What?
Exactly.
The whole world is so magical. There's so many things out there that, like, you never see. It's amazing.
But
It's so amazing.
before
It is
this
cool.
edible walk you took,
Yeah.
what did you
Yeah.
fuel yourself with?
Yeah.
No, it's so great. Like, you know, there's so much information that you just never see because you don't have the eyes trained to see it. So now I see, like, trees. Like, I don't know. I see all kinds of stuff. There's this plant that smells like Cheerios when you break open the leaves.
But is that like, I'm just very confused about the jump from, like, the world is magical, I want to eat it. Like, I don't. There's the
That's
jump.
one of the ways of experiencing the world, Jeff. You know, psychologists used to use the word anal retentive for a reason. You know, like, you're supposed to take in the world and let it flow out of you. That's
Now we're
beautiful
saying
thing.
anal retentive and eating it. Like,
It's not flowing if you're retentive.
Yeah.
I'm just suggesting to be less anal retentive is to take more of the world in and let it pass through you. You know?
So many
Come on.
comments, and I'm just minding
Right,
my
I
own
know.
business.
Alan has
On
an
that
oral
note-
fixation. All right. That'll do it for us this week. If you enjoy Irenicast and would like to join the work we're doing, please consider donating to our PayPal link at irenicast.com/PayPal. We're committed to keeping the show for free for listeners, but there are costs involved and your financial support helps. That's irenicast.com/PayPal. For more information on other ways you can partner with the show, you can go to irenicast.com/support. You can also show support to the show by simply making sure you're subscribed and never missing an episode. And if the platform allows it, leave a rating and or review. We would really appreciate it. We always enjoy hearing from our listeners. So for this week, I'm Jeff.
It's your boy, Alan.
I'm Bonnie.
I'm Casey.
And this is Rajiv.
Thanks for joining the conversation.